Thank you very much, Minister of State. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to structure my presentation today around essentially 3 points. I'd like to give you a very short introduction to the higher education context in Germany, some experience that we have made with the Baden-Württemberg Cooperative State University system, and leading from that, I'd like to just share with you some prerequisites for the successful implementation of this system, drawing on experience that we've had through our international partnerships. Amongst others, also in Hungary, I just would like to say in introduction, we had a very productive discussion with the minister and his staff on Tuesday, and I must just congratulate him on the introduction of this system in Hungary. There's a lot that I can learn and take back once again to Baden-Württemberg from your experience in the implementation, and thank you very much for that. It's been a very productive visit so far. In the German system, we have around 250, even more if you count it, around 400 higher education, tertiary education institutions. You see that in this landscape, the Duale Hochschule, the Cooperative State University, is quite a unique feature. Only one corporate state university as an entity. Many of the other institutions have dual programs, but essentially I think we're the only one in Germany. A few facts and figures over there. Very high proportion of students, large public spending in the German system on public education. The majority of the students in public institutions, private higher education institutions in Germany are still developing, but through the very good higher education system, there's not much of a chance. Moving now from the federal system towards our state, the state of Baden-Württemberg, you may know that this is a leading economic region in Europe because of the very high investment in research and development. More than 5% of the GDP is reinvested, and this is one of the secrets of the highly competitive aspects of Baden-Württemberg. Another aspect is the mix of internationally active companies, small and medium-sized enterprises, the so-called Mittelstand, with also a huge regional spread. There's very little focus. The state is highly industrialized from north to south and from west to east. The idea for this cooperative education system came from the realization that the classical hierarchical pyramid in the industry, where you have a broad base of unskilled labor and a small apex of executive managers and technical experts, this has changed and is changing with much more demand for people with higher employment, higher employability at the bachelor level and even at the master level. There is a change. And on this basis of the realization that this is changing, a model was developed over the last 40 years, which essentially has these elements. The elements are the integrated curriculum which combines the theoretical knowledge and the practical knowledge. And once again, I'd like to reiterate what the minister said. The dual education system is not a system where students go on an internship to the company. It's much more than that. It is learning in different contexts. if you dive slightly deeper into our education model, essentially the students move between the work environment and the academic environment. Our classroom moves, and you may know Erich Kästner, Fliegende Klassenzimmer. In a way, we have a Fliegende Klassenzimmer, a flying teaching environment. In the work environment, the students make concrete experience. They write there, they learn hands-on. As they move into the academic environment, they can take these observations and reflect on these observations. In the academic environment, there is some abstract conceptualization, some theory being made, and moving back into the academic environment, this theory can then be applied actively in the company together with some experimentation. This cycle, the so-called cycle of learning by doing, or some of those, I think Andras, you may know the work of Kolb, experiential learning. This is the cycle which underpins our pedagogical model. What are we aiming at the DHBW? The dual education system aims essentially at early employability of the students, and it does this essentially through giving students management competence with the elements of professional skills, social competence, and methodological competence. My experience in the last 9 months being at the DHBW is that it's not only the employability that's important, we also need, through the social competence, to train the students to being better citizens. It's a combination of employability and citizenship. I want to go into, just take you through the detail of the study process. It's pretty rigid. The first requirement is that the students need to have an Abitur. After the Abitur, there's a second selection process by the companies through complex assessment centers. They then become employees of the company before they enter into the 3-year undergraduate program, where the students move between the academic and the classroom environment, the academic and the industry environment. After 3 years, we award a degree with 210 ECTS points, and the students then go essentially into their professional activities. We also provide the possibility to, after a certain training phase, 2 years, to bring these students back into the DHBW in a work-integrated postgraduate study, a master study program. We have at the moment around 800 master students enrolled. And last but not least, by the way, this is a fee-based master system. This is not part of the public system. We have a small facility by which we charge fees. Mostly the companies pay these fees, also to retain the students. In this so-called Center for Advanced Studies, where we do the master's programs, we also have essentially further training modules made specifically for the companies. And in some cases, these students can then combine 5 or 6 modules and then at the end get a master. Last but not least, we also facilitate, together with our university partners or with Fraunhofer, we facilitate so-called cooperative PhD programs. And if you look at this, you see that the DHBW is now, after almost 10 years as a university, in the position to provide the full spectrum of academic training, essentially work integrated. Just some facts and figures. Over 90% in undergraduate studies. Our aim is to have around 9 to 10% in master programs and around 2 to 3% in PhD programs. So you see very strongly focused on the basic bachelor programs, but providing the students with the opportunity for those who want to go through the full academic training program. Now that I've spoken about our pedagogic model, I'd like to move on to give you some idea of the way we structured. The DHBW is distributed in Baden-Württemberg with 12 locations. We have 9 teaching locations, and then we have a headquarter in Stuttgart, and we have a center for advanced studies for the master and the PhD programs in Heilbronn. The facts are there, and as I said, this has been established as one of the first regionally distributed, dedicated universities for work-integrated training. The system has been amazingly successful, and an indication of the success and the attractiveness of this program is that at the moment around 10% of all students within the state of Baden-Württemberg are registered at the Duale Hochschule. We are the largest as well university in the state. Let me now get to the advantages of the system from our perspective, the advantages for the students, the advantages for the companies, and the advantages for the state. For the students, it's very clear. They have very intensive supervision. Our classes are never bigger than 30 students. So we have small classes with a very intensive supervision. Of course, short time to degree. Over 90% of our students get there in 3 years. Now at the age of 21, they get into the company and they say, why am I not vice president yet? Of course, a very active and attractive aspect for the students is from the first semester they're financially independent. They get paid between 800 and 1,200 euros per month during the time they're in the company and during the time that they're with us. And they have, in this combination of vocational and higher education training, they also have lecturers who come from the companies and provide them with very up-to-date information. And of course, they have very good prospects moving into the companies, into the labor market. We have, in the same way as the experience in Hungary, a large oversubscription of students. We cannot provide every single student who wants to study here with a study place. And therefore, of course, we have a pre-selection and have essentially the best Abiturienten in Baden-Württemberg. If you look at the advantages to the policy advantages for education, labor, and social policy, it's very cost efficient. 3 years, there's a very low dropout rate, it's efficient, and the employability is really amazing. Almost 100% of the students get into the job immediately. There are also some aspects that the Minister mentioned earlier on that we see. This is an instrument to include students from families that are prospectively not close to public education or to higher education. So kids from underprivileged backgrounds can come. And it's also a very important instrument for regional development. Students can study and work and stay in their communities. The other aspect that we notice is that there's also a high degree of exchange between the different students and the different companies. So there's also a very early building of industrial and social networks, which then are stable once the students go into their local companies. The advantages for the companies are also obvious. Through their involvement in the selection process, they can look and co-opt students that fit their needs. And then, of course, talent is easier retented. What is not on here, but what is also very important, is that the companies are involved in setting the curriculum, and the companies are involved in teaching. The companies sit with us in the Senate. So close is the relationship. And we know, of course, that the companies tell us that once the students have gone through our system, they are really excellent in their performance within the companies, and they are mostly the ones that make career very quickly because of their early socialization in the companies. I spoke about the role of the DHBW in regional development. We have developed as a regional partner across the company, across this land, not only with the big companies, but also with small and medium enterprises. And what has developed in the last 40 years with the Berufsakademie and later on the university are support for different industrial clusters. You can see the clusters have developed management and information technology in Mannheim, Karlsruhe, social service and social work, healthcare and care management. Then very strong, the medical engineering and healthcare management cluster in the southwest of Germany. In the southeast, hotel management, tourism, media around Ravensburg. And then in the center, industrial engineering, automotive engineering, mechanical engineering. And last but not least, a very strong trade and industry cluster around Heilbronn, Bad Mergentheim, Moosbach, the company Lidl typically, the Schwarz company, the Schwarz Stiftung Lidl typically, whom you all know, has its headquarters in Heilbronn, and of course are very strong in trade and industry. So you see as well a very differentiated support of the different clusters through the region. By the way, our curricula are structured as such. Around 80% of the curriculum, say in engineering, is core, and 20% can be then adjusted to fit the specific regional needs. That's a feature of our curriculum. We work with, as I said, companies whom you all know, but I think the hidden champions are the ones that are most important. The small and medium enterprises, the Mittelstand, they really carry the bulk of the industrial success of Baden-Württemberg. And a company like Daimler typically only has what is called a Fertigungstiefe. What is that in English? Only about 12% of what Daimler makes, they make themselves. The other 90% they buy. And for that, of course, they need the suppliers, etc., which are not in focus, but are also our partners. Let me give you some indicators of success of this system. This is not what we say. This is what essentially has been found. An empirical study by some researchers at the University of Tübingen found that the best secondary school leavers for the last 10 years are attracted to study at the DHBW. Two studies by IBM show that our graduates move into executive positions much faster than graduates from other educational institutions. This is an internal study. And of course, when you look at the cohorts, they of course have much higher salaries as well than employees coming from other areas. Now, I don't want to just speak about success. I think we have some serious deficits as well in the system. The area that we need to develop is we need to give our students a stronger university experience. Our students are essentially very busy. They move from their academic into their corporate environments. And I think that the analytical skills, the independent learning skills, and the academic skills are something that we need to sharpen up within our system. Let me move now to the experiences that we've made and some of the prerequisites that are necessary to establish this system. We have a huge amount of partners, academic partners worldwide. This is just an indication. I don't expect you to read that. There is large interest in the international domain. We've learnt that in Hungary, I think that you've gone a long way. But of course, China, especially our corporate partners in China, are knocking at our door every day. This model has been applied as well in Latin America. There is the so-called Duale Hochschule Lateinamerika. And at the moment, 9 universities in Mexico, those countries are enrolled, around 1,400 students in the system. And there you see some information of the Latin American network. Once again, focusing on investment of German companies in these areas and providing the students within those areas the education to work within the German and, of course, other companies in this area. Let me close maybe with a reflection on what are the factors that contribute to the success of the implementation of the cooperative education model. Essentially, there are 4 factors. We need a critical mass of partners who are prepared to invest, and this is proactively, in appropriately trained graduates, not sitting and waiting for the university system to provide the graduates, but say, we will invest proactively, even if these students do not come directly to us. We recognize that when the educational level in general in an area is increased, we all have a benefit from that. I come from a city in Africa called Cape Town, and we have an expression there, when the water in the harbor rises, all the boats rise. And the same way as this, when the educational level in a region rises, everyone rises. And I think that is the attitude that is very important, that needs to be recognized. I think in Baden-Württemberg we have that. The second prerequisite, and you're very fortunate that you have this in Hungary, that the local, state and national authorities are prepared to accredit and certify these kinds of models. Huge resistance in other domains where the education authorities say, we don't know this, we're not interested, but again in Hungary, with your state minister, you have that prerequisite absolutely set. Another prerequisite is, of course, the critical mass of academics and especially company people that will sit together and jointly develop the model, the curriculum, but also be prepared to teach in the model. So that somebody from Siemens or from Bosch will say, we will not only contribute to the structure of the curriculum, we will allow our company participants to go and teach. And we have as well a system whereby we train external teachers in all the pedagogic activities, because you can't expect an engineer coming from Knorr-Bremse, other than he's a professor at the university, to teach successfully. So we also need to train the trainers. But that needs to be there. And then, of course, you need to also move towards a higher education culture that says it's not just our responsibility to develop the character of the students. It's our responsibility as well to prepare these young people for the future in the workplace. And this is a culture in Germany which is still, as you may know, very, very strong. The universities say it's not our job to prepare the students for the workplace, therefore we have vocational training. Our job is to develop their personalities. The fact is that over 60% of students coming out of German universities today go into the workplace, and they're not prepared. So you need that higher education culture. And once again, I'm really impressed and pleased to see how that culture is being inculcated in Hungary and how you're changing that culture, because that's very, very important. Last but not least, of course, you need the know-how with respect to setting up these very complicated new systems. And we're privileged that in the last 40 years we've developed some of that expertise, and we'd be very happy to share that with you in the further development of, say, master's programs, for instance. Let me close with two alternative models for establishing such a system. We've actually spoken about them implicitly. One model is implementing this idea within existing university structures. You've done this in Hungary, and the Latin America model does the same. Certain courses within universities are identified and then provided as dual models. There are advantages in that, but there are also disadvantages. I think in Austria you do the same way. The second model, and this is not a widespread model, this is a model that we have, is the establishment of an independent structure as a vehicle for doing this. This provides, of course, the necessary flexibility, the independence, and again, the opportunity to build this very specific and necessary educational culture, which is, I would say, Humboldt plus. Humboldt said research and teaching, and I think our culture is teaching, research, and experience. Thank you very much, and thank you very much once again for inviting me.